How's it going, everybody? I'm Chris Vaccaro, and this is another Sachem conversation. This one's with Linda Detlefsen Nicosia, one of the all-time great track and field athletes in Sachem history, in the University of Georgia history, in Suffolk County and Long Island history, and even in American history for several of the events that she's participated in. So I'm excited to chat with you about your life and career on the track and all the great things you've done. So thanks for joining me.
I'm honored. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah. So for the audience, for the folks that are familiar with it, great. You've been watching these over the last 6 or 7 months, and we're doing this because we want to make sure we build an archive of people who made and lived history so we don't forget it, so we can inspire the next generation of Sachem alumni and teachers and people who are difference makers in this community, because it means so much to me, because it means so much to the thousands of people that have gone here and live here and continue to raise their families here, like myself as well. And all of these interviews, obviously there's a archival digital footprint online on YouTube, on Sachem Report, on the Sachem alumni pages. But also at the end of each year, my goal is to have these put on a hard drive, and it's at the Sachem Public Library, and then it'll be at the libraries at Sachem North and Sachem East as well. And then there'll be physical transcriptions of the interviews as well, because let's not forget that when we're gone, hopefully that's not for many, many years, people could still read this stuff. People could still watch this stuff. So it's my goal to create this oral history project for the generations to come, so we keep this thing going here and not lose sight of who we were as a community. And so,
well, I don't know if you know this, but I'm a certified librarian, and I understand the value of what you're doing. I'm also a genealogist. I spent last week just researching in New York City through all the old libraries, and it's a little scary to know that this is going to be dug up years and years later. But I think it's just such a
yeah.
Oh, I think they will, and I think it's a great project that you do, and I really have a lot of respect, and I'm inspired by you.
Thanks. That's awesome. No, I'm excited that you're here, and and I hope that thousands of people are impacted by this over the years. And honestly, the reception early on in the first 6 or 7 months has been great, because there are people like, oh my God, I hadn't thought of so and so. Oh wow, that coach was so inspiring. I'm sure there will be people from the alumni pages on social that will see this and go, oh, I graduated with Linda. Oh, this is great to see. That I love the conversation that's coming from this conversation. It's pretty neat. But let's go back in time for you. Let's go back to, were you born in the Sachem community? Did your parents come here from a different region from the city like so many others? Like where does your Sachem foundation start?
I found out last week that 1 in 7 Americans have roots in New York City. And I think it's probably almost everybody on Long Island.
Right.
So like so many of my peers at the time, the generation before me moved out from the city, and my mother came out from Brooklyn. And she was one of the oldest of 10. And, they struggled like so many people. And her way of getting out of a bad situation was to get married, to drop out of school and get married and have kids. And of course she was too young for that. And they moved out to Arizona, and that's where I was born. And then by the time my mother was 22, she was divorced and had 2 kids, and we were back living with her mother. So she boomeranged. And so, I had a kind of a hard childhood because of all of that. I had a mother that was a teenager when we were born, and she wasn't educated, and she was divorced, and she didn't get any help from her birth father. So, but she was an amazing survivor, and she always worked like so many people back then. I mean, the work ethic was just amazing. And I think it was sort of a combination of sort of the political times. People were like burning draft cards and bras. Everything was moving forward, and everybody was moving eastward on Long Island, and everything was being built, and everybody was such a hard worker. And I also think it's, maybe the second and third generation of immigrants, something about that really made people work so hard. And so my mother bought a mobile home in a park that was between Lincoln and Coates Avenue in Holbrook, and she made it work. but there was a stigma attached to that, and that's what I grew up with. I was the trailer park girl, and so, and there was no, I was alone a lot, and it was a tough upbringing. So when I found running, that was like, I feel like running saved my life. It just it opened up so many doors for me, and gave me a way of developing confidence and finding out who I was, and it got me. Track and field is, a lot of people don't know this, but it's the #2 sport in the world in popularity behind soccer. And I spent most of my career over in Europe, and there's a lot to be gained from all that kinds of, that travel, and it was very, very good for me.
So when did you find running? Was this a middle school thing? And do you see this symmetry with kind of this solo aspect of just you on the pavement? You felt like you were, by yourself in this individualistic way, but you also translated that into a sport where you can pretty much be by yourself and own this opportunity. When did you really like, oh my God, this is great, I needed this? Were you 12? Were you 15?
I was, I don't know. I always ran. I always had a dog, and we used to run together. Do you remember that show, $6 Million Man? And I don't know, you might be a little young for that.
Probably a little.
And then there was the sort of partner show to that, The Bionic Woman. All my old friends are going to know this. And I had this really active imagination. I remember just running with my dog through the woods, and we had a lot of woods back then. And just pretending that I was like strong and capable and running. And I don't even know how I got into running. My brother was on the team, and I think that just sort of inspired me. And it was really just serendipity. And, there weren't a lot of girls running back then. And I joined the track team at Seneca in ninth grade. And just sort of dabbled in it at that point. And then when I got to Sachem the following year, we were on split sessions. There were over 1,700 in our graduating class that year. It was way before they split the schools into two. And so I didn't we had our practices in the morning. We didn't even go to school till like lunchtime. And I was the only girl on the team. And that wasn't something that was like, courageous or anything like that. I just did it, and I was very accepted. The boys on the team they were great. They were nice. They were protective. They were proud of me, and they helped me. And the coach at that time was Mr. Schmosky. I don't know his first name, but he made it really fun. There's coaches that are like really, serious about winning. And then there's coaches that look at the athlete and think, what do they need? And ninth grade cross country runners, they like to have fun. And he really gave that to us. And I think that sort of propelled me to stick with it.
Were you the only girl on the team because there wasn't a female track team, or there was just no interest?
There was a female track team. There weren't, there wasn't a tradition at the school yet. I was the only girl on the cross country team.
On the cross country, okay.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, that's the thing about running is it's actually 3 sports. Like I went to the University of Georgia and I got 9 varsity letters.
Right. It's a 3 season, so you can run every indoor, outdoor, plus long distance in the fall. So it's
right.
It's just nonstop. So there was no girls cross country team at that time. So you competed with the boys.
Yeah, and I was like 5th man.
But think about it today, where there are, even in middle school, junior high, whatever, there's hundreds of girls that are now running cross country, and those teams are organized just like the boys. But you grew up at a time where it wasn't completely equal, or they didn't have teams for all girls sports, which is interesting. And Title IX is a thing, and there were people like Arisa Zander who were fighting for equality in Sachem sports, and we're more there now than ever. But at that time, there were trailblazers, and you're a trailblazer just for saying, "Hey, I want to compete," even though you're not looking at it like that. the fact that you had to compete with the boys team, I haven't had that type of conversation with anybody yet.
I'm really proud of it now. And, what happened was Nixon signed Title IX in 1972. And then, it takes a few years for that to kick in. And so by the time I got to be a junior, I was doing really well. I was like, winning. I think I was like, maybe by that point I was maybe the top 3 in the state, and I was running very fast times. And we did not have an indoor state championship for the girls, and that was like legally they had to have it. So what happened was, and my mother was a Democratic committee woman, so she was kind of a political activist at that point. And so between the fact that I was a really good runner and she was politically active, and there were a lot of other people that were like, this is not right, we need to fix this. We had to file a lawsuit against the state to have that track meet. And it wasn't like there was going to be a big court battle or anything. The papers just had to be filed. It was like a formality. And then we had the meet. But what the result of that was that my name is on that lawsuit as a plaintiff signatory, standing for the rights of every girl in the state of New York, fighting New York. It made me look like some kind of feminist militant. So that by the time I got to, I was getting my master's degree, and I was trying to find a grant. I pulled that out, and I ended up getting my whole master's paid for by the American Association of University Women, who wanted to give a grant to a woman that would be a good role model for other women. So I wasn't a feminist militant or anything like that, but I'm really proud of, that I was there at the time, and that, when I was asked to, put my name down or asked to, do anything that had to do with what hadn't been done before, I was really proud that I was, there. But I wasn't, I wasn't aware of, the, blazing a path or anything like that.
You were just living. You were just trying to get on that track and do what you normally do, which is run. But unfortunately, I had to get political. But these are great stories. I mean, this is all part of your journey and path. You're in high school. You're getting stronger. You're competing at a very high level. Who are the coaches? Who are the influences that are guiding you, pushing you, to reach some of those incredible numbers and records that we're going to talk about?
Well, I think because of the sort of chaotic situation that Sachem, the transition that was going on, with the split sessions and then the 2 schools and all of that, it was like Sachem North and Sachem South, and there were a lot of different coaches. And the ones that really stand out for me were, Mr. Smosky, of course. I don't know if I would have continued running if it wasn't for his perspective on it. That running is fun, basically. And there was Bruce McDonald and Jim Setman and Kevin Spellman and Mrs. Neal. And of course, the man that I ended up marrying 30 years later, actually 36 years later, Guy Nicosia, who, of course, I had a big crush on him in high school. And then I moved away for 25 years. I lived in Georgia for 25 years. And when I came back, we started dating. He helped me get a job at Northport High School. And so he was a big influence. And really, when it comes to coaches, the ones that are really the best ones are the ones that can see your potential. It's the same as with teachers. The ones that can see your potential and know how to teach you to, use what you have in the best way possible. And he was one of them.
It's amazing.
All the coaches were great, though.
Yeah. And they're probably going, well, we got something special here. The speed, the long distance, the indoor, multi-season, like you were crushing it. I mean, 1979, 78, 79, you were on a path that pretty much nobody else was on in the area, let alone the Northeast. I mean, it was some of the best things that have ever happened at Sachem cross country, track and field ever, still to this day. But when you break that sub 5-minute mile in 79, is that something where you're like, whoa, you could tell the difference in your timing, that was a special moment? And then how often did you do that? Was that like a rare occurrence? Was that something that you just wound up doing all the time by the early 80s? Like, how does that play out for you?
In high school, yeah, I mean, I think my junior and senior years, I was always either just above or below 5 minutes. But yeah, I was realizing my potential, and I know it really helped with the boys, because if I was running with the girls, I probably wouldn't have been running it as fast, and so I just got used to it. Oh, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, we talk over the pictures for sure.
Yes. You know what it was? I just had found a passion, and your passion is something that you either love doing or you love the effect or result of what you're doing. And I really liked, what running was doing for me. I mean, people really liked me when I, ran. I mean, I was not the popular kid when I was, younger. And by the time I got to be later in high school, it was a complete change. And it was very strange for me. And I just really liked that people really liked what I was doing. And that just kind of, kept me going. And people really believed in me. And it was amazing. And I had a lot of attention. And so, by the time I got to, the problem was I wasn't a very good student. I didn't have any kind of, academic skills, or I wasn't someone who did homework. I didn't have a mother that emptied my book bag, and so I didn't really know what I was doing, and I didn't think I was very smart. And a lot of teachers didn't think I was very smart. And I was enrolled in classes like, that balance your checkbook math, and typing, and just really low level courses. And then all of a sudden I get 170 scholarship offers. And those were just like the full ride ones, And it was like, what are we going to do with her? How are we going to get her to get, accepted into a school? And so all of a sudden I'm in Spanish class, and this is my senior year, and some other classes. And it was just, it was difficult. I remember I had to take something called the SAT. I'd never heard of it, never prepared for it. And there were no more tests in the area. So they sent me to an all boys school, St. Anthony's. And I walk into this gym with hundreds of boys in ties, and they sat me down and put a test in front of me. And I had no idea what I was doing. And I just bubbled in answers. So my scores were really low. So that the short story of this is that there were very few of those scholarships that I could accept. And I was so lucky that the University of Georgia had something called the Special Studies Program. And it was me and a whole bunch of big black football players. And this was, I probably had maybe a 10th grade education by the time I graduated Sachem. And the reason that I was even able to make it through were because of people like the math teacher, Phil Weaver, and the history teacher, Ken Brady. And believe it or not, the typing teacher, Mrs. Tulo, because of her, I mean, she was just like, and I realize this is a pun, but she was all business. And she actually was sort of my model when I became a teacher later. Just really just good teachers that, saw my potential and helped me scrape by. And I got into the program at the University of Georgia. And that's where I learned that I was actually smart and that I just needed some skills. And I ended up, graduating with a 4.0. And then I got 2 master's degrees with 4.0s. I mean, you would have never thought that about me. My husband looks back at the person he knew when I was in high school, and he said, yeah, no, I would have never thought that.
Well, it all running out. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
It also, it also got me. I mean, the competition that I faced, especially after I started competing at the national level at Georgia. And then from there, I signed with Nike and started competing internationally. And those kinds of experiences, they just make normal life a lot easier. When I'm standing on the line of the world championships with, 14 of the world's fastest milers, and there's 100,000 people screaming in the stands, and it's 5 minutes to TV. It makes a job interview a lot more doable. You don't get so nervous. So it's been and I look back on that now, and I was so hard on myself, and I never thought that I was good enough. And I look back at her, and I'm very proud of her now. And I think I think sport is very important for young people, or any passion, just so that they can find themselves and develop confidence, and be better students and better, people and citizens. It's a wonderful thing.
So why Georgia? I mean, did it come down to them and another school or a handful that you were like, "Wow, this is a tough decision"? I mean, that's definitely putting you out of your Long Island comfort zone. That's way down there, and we haven't had too many Sachem alums go to any of those SEC schools, let alone Georgia. So I'm always curious of why. How'd you make that decision?
Oh, well, they accepted me.
Well, that's a good start. Yeah.
That was it. And the coach was from New York. His name was Bill Katz, and he was only there for a year, but he was very persuasive. And there were daffodils all over campus in March. So, it was a pretty easy decision for me, and I'm really glad that I went there. I just went back there a few weeks ago for an event where they were celebrating 50 years of women in sport. And I got a little spotlight there because I was the first NCAA champion in track and field, and for women, and that was really fun. And just like at Sachem, the tradition has just gotten so strong, both there and at Sachem, to the point where there's like so many people on the team, and where we were like taking a bus up to Michigan to compete. They have their own charter plane now, UTA. So, it's just the sport has become important, and I really like that.
Were there one or two? I mean, obviously you have 16 varsity letters, so there's a lot of races, a lot of time, indoor, outdoor, long distance. What's like the one Georgia race, NCAA race? Was it a championship that you'll never forget, that really almost defined the experience? It's the one thing you always think about. Is there one of those moments?
Well, winning is always memorable, and I won the NCAA championships in New York. It was at Syracuse. It was an indoor national championship, and that was pretty great because there were so many people there that I knew from when I was in high school. They had come up, and whenever I would compete at like the Melrose Games in New York City, people would come out. I remember one day, one meet in New York City, I hear Linda, and I look up, and it's Mr. Woolley. He was amazing. He was like, "You can do it." So yeah, I mean that was a memorable day. Winning in front of sort of, my New York crowd. But probably my most memorable one, and I think a lot of athletes have this, is the one that I didn't quite win, the one that I was supposed to win. The following outdoor season, it was my very last NCAA, and I got outleaned at the line. It's like you never forget that, and you relive it in your mind over and over again. But like 5 minutes later, I signed with Nike and had an 8-year professional career, so it wasn't all bad.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about that. So how does it go where you become a Nike athlete? And for 8 years, that was your job. You were a pro runner, which, again, not many people know a pro athlete, let alone a pro runner, which is so specific and not easy. And there's a lot of world travel, and all the events are like kind of all over the place. So you got to see the world. But being a Nike athlete, is that a lucrative thing? You're getting free gear? Are you meeting Phil Knight? Like, how does that all play out, and what was that experience like?
The way that it worked is, I got a salary, and the gear is interesting because the whole Title IX thing in the 70s, Nike started sending gear to high school athletes. So all through high school, I got Nike gear. And so it was kind of a no-brainer, who I was going to sign with afterwards. But, they give you a salary, they give you your gear, they pay for your travel if it wasn't paid for already. And, and they paid for other things like school. They paid for, if you still had classes to take, which I did. And, they gave you insurance, just like a job, except it had more benefits. And they paid for other things, like massages and health club memberships and things like that. And, but really the money that I ended up, saving, it came from, appearance money. And the way that it worked was, it was like there was kind of we were like a cohort of athletes, and all of the meet directors in Europe sort of, we were like their stable of athletes, and they brought us from meet to meet to meet. So, I got to, and I traveled with the Santa Monica Track Club. That was like the Carl Lewis crowd. And because Carl was so famous he was so famous in Europe because, they would have not known who the, famous football and basketball players were over in Europe, but they knew the soccer and the track stars. And because I traveled with his group, I think I got to, sort of see a lot more of, the cool stuff, with him. But so I got appearance money, and then there was prize money, and then Nike paid bonus money for times and things like that. So over the course of all of that, sorry, my light just went off. Over the course of all of that, I was able to save a lot of money and buy a house and go back to school and things like that. So
Good, that's good. And that was 8 years. So then by like 1992, the pro career may be over, but have you been running still for the last, 30 something years in a recreational way to stay in shape? Like, are you still out there doing it?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that I even got into running in the first place was because my health has always been really important. Now I realize that nutrition is a lot more important than exercise, but yeah, I probably ran up until I was in my early 50s. But, I think there's only so many miles in the human body.
Right.
But, I exercise almost every day still. I hate the weight workouts, but I do it twice a week because and I tap dance and I sail, and I'm section hiking the Appalachian Trail. I go on these trips every, month or two, and I do like 50 miles at a time. And I think I've gotten like maybe 600 or 700 miles. And that's, I'm just very active, and I like to be outside a lot.
Good. Well, we're almost up at the half hour mark. If you had to wrap it up and kind of define your legacy, how would you do that? How would you put that? How do you want people to remember you on the field or on the track and in distance running, or in general as a person that grew up here and comes from this island and this community?
I kind of hope they don't remember me. If I'm honest, it's too much pressure.
Well, don't worry, they will because they watch this. So.
Well, the thing that I'm most proud of is my teaching career. I was really good at it, and I feel like the reason that I was good at it was because of the running. The only way to be happy is if if you know yourself, and the only way to know yourself, or as you get to know who you are, that's building self-confidence, that whole thing. And because I learned that late, I was able to, sort of teach students how to do that. And I did that through English and literature and all of that. And I feel like, I would have never been such a good teacher if I wasn't, if I didn't have the experience of competing for 16 years, and especially at the level that I did. So how do I want to be remembered? I don't know. I want to be remembered as somebody who, in 16 years, I never missed a workout. morning, afternoon, I never missed a workout. I'm somebody who just showed up every single time and just, whether I was winning or losing, I just kept going.
Awesome. That's awesome. This was a lot of fun. A lot of things I didn't know, and I'm happy we got to chat. So I appreciate you joining me, and hopefully we'll talk soon and keep in touch.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.